Hey guys, what's up? My name's Kyle. I do OCR. I'm not like, topping any sort of leaderboard for age group or elite brackets for Spartan, but it's something fun I do, and I thought I'd do a race recap, kind of just to detail a few things, show some footage. I do have some video clips from Sweden so you get an idea at least of what it looks like. It's not particularly great, looks pretty good. Kind of need to figure out mounts. I had it on my shoulder. I don't think it's ideal, especially for audio, because it's way too damn loud. The purpose of making this video, if you're thinking about doing Sweden next year, which I really hope they return to it, I had a great time, or if you kind of want to get a feel for like what running in that weather is like, as far as like an obstacle course race and what to expect, hopefully I can provide some good information here that you might find useful. So for me, my path was to go from Raleigh in North Carolina, where I'm from, to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Trondheim in Norway. And I did that because Trondheim actually has car rentals at their airport. It's actually a nice little airport. This one was only about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from Oira. It's pretty painless. We were able to pick up our rental car, no problem. But my brother and I were able to get in after a whole day of flying and drive the hour and 45 minutes to Oira. It was about like 7 to 10 degree difference. It was like 25 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, sorry guys. To 18 degrees, 17 degrees in Oira. So you definitely get a little bit of an elevation gain going through the mountains that separate Norway and Sweden. So we got in, I left Wednesday night, got in Thursday night essentially. 6-hour change obviously adds more time to that. Friday was the packet pickup and check-in. That was around, it was like 1 to 2:45. I go and you get your racing bibs and your volunteer bibs. We had 2 each for a support that could rotate. So let's say you had somebody who's like, oh, I need to go sleep and take a nap, and I'm going to tag in somebody. As long as you exchange your bibs, you could have like a bigger support team. It's just you can only have 2 at a time. The bibs for the Open, AG, and Elites were different. Open, I had a black bib. I think it was the fuchsia color for age group, and purple was the color for Elites. We had to write our bib number on it. Some people did bib number and name. They seemed to get confused there as far as like what we're supposed to write, but I think it was definitely bib number at least. I didn't bother writing my name or anything like that. 3 o'clock, there's the briefing, which they sent in an email later, and I was thinking, man, I could have just gone home and taken a nap. But I mean, it was important, so it was good to not only to be there, but meet other racers. I met a few people from Iceland, kind of described their experience. And I think one of the big things that was the difference this year for Iceland versus Sweden was they were both difficult in their own way. There was definitely like more trail running with Iceland, although it got really windy there apparently. The venue there for Iceland was also like in the middle of nowhere, whereas with Sweden, it was literally in the middle of the town. The transition area is in a hotel, and the course runs, it ends and runs through the town up into the mountains and back down in a big loop. I really liked that course design. It was very cool, running through the town and having the townspeople, Oira, cheering us on, and they were out until like 11 o'clock at night. So they were out there, and they were very supportive. They were very nice. It was just really, really cool, especially around that 11 o'clock where I was kind of struggling. You're like, oh my gosh, I got so much left. And for them to be like, total strangers to me, but like really supportive was amazing. So we go through the briefing. They kind of go over the rules. One of the things that if you're going to do this next year, they're probably going to have a similar system or do the exact same thing. Open runners would, if there were burpee obstacles, which there were 7, if you failed it, you would do the burpees there at the designated. There'd be a pit designated, and open runners would do their burpees there. Whereas age group and elites, they had what was called a passport system. Age group and elites had a little green wristband passport that they would get. They'd get a hole punch. There would be a unique punch per, I think it was 7 obstacles. And depending on how many they got, so let's say you had 5, when they got to the transition area, instead of the open runners where they would just go into the transition area and start to do whatever they needed to do, they would have to check in with the marshal that was there, and they would do whatever burpees they owed. If they didn't owe any, that's okay. They go to transition. So it's kind of one of those weird things where do you like it in the traditional system where burpees is done at the obstacle, and then when you get to the end, you're at the end, or do you want to like backload it with all the burpees at the end? I saw a lot of like AG runners who they're like, all right, I'm just going to take the penalty, and they'd rather just keep going through the course. I kind of understand that because, man, you get to like the top, and I'll get to the course in a second. It kind of made sense, and especially as it got later, especially past like midnight when it was getting really cold up there, it was kind of understandable. You don't want to spend extra time. I mean, for the open runners too, it's like you don't want to spend extra time doing that. If it's a burpee obstacle, and for the open runners, it was like, well, after midnight, it's only 15 burpees. Some cases, it's like, I don't know if I can do this obstacle, so might as well just do the 15 burpees. Briefing, get to meet people. They talk about there's the new Ultra World Championships, and everything gets mailed out later in an email. But again, what's really nice about the location at the Holiday Club, there's a grocery store right there. There's a ski shop right there. So the big difference between Sweden and Iceland was if you didn't have something, you could go buy it in town. I mean, granted, until a certain time when all the shops close. But early on, if you identify that, oh man, I don't have this, grocery store's right there. They had an ICA, which is the supermarket, has pretty much everything you need. I didn't need a lot of food. I mean, some people brought a ton of stuff. I'm that way during regular ultras. I don't really need a ton of food. I just need some gels and some water, tailwind, and I'm pretty good. Some people had some really good stuff. And I want to give a special shout out to the Island of Misfit Toys. This is what the group calls themselves. They organized in the Spartan Ultra Facebook group, and they basically provide solo runners or people who had supports that were off, like my brother was off doing the super race. They were able to provide supplies that we needed. They came in clutch. I really appreciated it. It's such a great idea, and it's one of the great things about the community is they do this selflessly. So I really appreciated them. Shouts out to them for doing that. The course itself was really cool. As far as the start is concerned, it was a little bit different from the rest of the laps. So we started off by the Strand, or the little beach looking over the lake, which was awesome. It was a great view of the frozen lake.
Moments away from the 2019 Spartan Ultra World Championship! Now, as every single one of you knows, if you've been to a Spartan race before we allow you out onto the course, there is a very special question that you must answer. Every time you hear me say, "Who am I need you to scream as loud as you can, "I am a Spartan!" So let's try one on for size, ladies and gents, and see just how much noise you can make. Who am I? I'm Spartan! Yes, you are Spartans. And you are gathered here today as your forefathers gathered before you on the battlefield at the moment. You have trained your minds, and your bodies will follow, no matter what obstacles you face on your journey. Who am I? I'm Spartan!
So we skipped the first 8 obstacles, and the reason for that, and it makes a lot of sense, is they wanted to prevent a bottleneck. So we had every single wave of ultras. We had the elites, age group, and then open in that order, launching at the same time. So they were trying to prevent a huge bottleneck, which it would have caused, and it allowed the elites and the faster runners to get out ahead and put some distance between them and the casuals, I guess, like me. So I think that was really smart. So for us, it was like, okay, we're running past all these obstacles. We get to go through the town. People are out in the early hours, so it was really kind of cool. You begin the uphill section, and the first part of it isn't too bad. You're kind of just like bottlenecked a little bit at first, walking up the hill, and you're like, oh, okay, it's got some vertical gains. It's not too bad. But you do the Olympus, There was Olympus, tire drag, and sandbag carry were the first couple. Sandbag was actually more like the big pancake. And then the next part was the serious uphill version, which lap 1 wasn't too bad, but as time went on, it was some pretty heavy vert, and I think the vertical gain wasn't so bad. Like if it wasn't the conditions that it was in, snowing and really, really cold, it would be like, a fairly difficult Spartan race course, but I think the elements is just what made it seem worse, especially you have this one really steep section where I did this, and I saw a lot of other people do this, where they use trees to kind of brace themselves as they're walking up because it was very, very steep. West Virginia has stuff like this. I'm sure Palmerton and Killington have similar sections. I haven't done those, but you get past that, and there's still a pretty long, it's a gradual, not as steep kind of section, but later on in those laps, you're like, oh gosh, it's cold, it's dark, there's not a lot of people around. It's a lot of like mental toughness was needed there. I mean, for me, it was literally going left foot, right foot for a while where I was struggling. And eventually you get to the top, and bender's the first obstacle. Once you get to that, you stop doing the vertical gain portion. I think it was one of the penalty loop obstacles. You do that. Then there was an easy like wood slat kind of up and over wall, not too difficult. After that was the 10-foot wall, was another penalty loop obstacle. And then from there, you start to slowly ascend. You'll do a decent portion. We ran a decent portion descending. Then we do a hurdle, a bucket carry loop, which wasn't too difficult, and wasn't too steep. But the next section is, especially on the first lap, you kind of realize like, okay, this is going to be a really challenging part of this course. It's a very, very steep decline, and it was very slippery, and it got worse as the night went on. It was very, very slick. A lot of people were wiping out. I landed on my right arm probably no less than 6 times due to slick areas. I think Morgan McKay, who I think she won 2 years ago in Iceland, had a really bad fall. The reason why I know this is because I was like coming into the transition area as she was doing her burpees, but she like hit her head in a fall. She still did her burpees after that too when she got to the transition area before going to medical, which I thought was pretty badass. But I mean that she wasn't alone in that. A lot of people were slipping. I slipped a lot, and this descending portion was like, wow, okay, I got to be really careful about this. And it was deceiving too. So you have this long descending part, and at the end of it is an uphill barbed wire crawl from hell. I mean, it's not so much that it was uphill. It's just like the snow was just solid. It was like solid as a rock. It was ice shards. I mean, it was unforgiving on the knees and elbows, and it got really tough later on. Like those laps 2, 3, 4. You start to question your life, and you're like, oh God, why am I doing this? But yeah, that one was tough, at least mentally. I mean, tough, you got through it, but it was just like, it was such a slog for me, and I was like, oh God, I have to do this, 6 times at a minimum. But so it was a little bit deceiving. I'm descending down the hill, and we're getting close to the town again. That means we're almost done, and they hit you with that. After the uphill barbed wire crawl, you had a little section where you start to go into town, and there was another stairwell with horribly slick ice leading down the stairwell, or just before the stairwell, leading down to where the monkey bars and the sled pole were. I wiped out on that, said a few choice words in frustration, landing on my arm again, and it's just now healing. This being like about 4 or 5 days after the race. Monkey bars was, so this is really important if you're unfamiliar with this, or you're thinking about doing any kind of race in this weather where you have to like do obstacles. If you're a barehander like me, like I don't like using gloves or any sort of thing, the smart thing to do, I think, is to just get a really good solid pair of heavy gloves, have a good way of storing them quickly, do the obstacle, and put them back on immediately. I mean, if you try to do this whole like lighter glove thing where you have liners, it's like, think about it. You got to put 4 gloves on, which can be a real mess. And then if they're too light, like some of the lighter ones, they're just gonna, especially later in the night, they were just not enough. I eventually switched to a heavy pair and just took them off and then put them back on after I was done. Way better. I did the monkey bars 5 times, and the only time I failed it was with gloves. If you've practiced with gloves, knock yourself out. But like if you do bare hand like me, it was just much better to do it that way. It was just the hands and feet was the toughest part. The parts where I had such a long transition, which you could probably go look on Athlinks and see how long it was. It was because my hands or feet were just freezing cold and I had nothing. You absolutely need multiple pairs, probably for as many laps as you're going to do, or you could do what a bunch of smart guys from Poland did near me, where they had like a clothesline set up. And every time they changed their socks out, they would hang up the gear that they were going to reuse so it would dry. You got 2 hours to let it dry. So by the time you get back, it's better. But in my opinion, I think it's like you need at least 2 pairs of reliably heavy gloves that are good if you're a barehander like me, and as many socks as you can, like wool socks, like darn tough socks as you can. You like maybe reuse them once. This race, honestly, it's not like a typical ultra where you have a first loop where you have 2 basically you're running a beast back to back, and you know the first loop is probably going to have an extra ultra loop, which may include like, I don't know, 2 to 3 obstacles and a few extra miles to top it out around 30 miles total. It was actually more like running 6 sprints in a row that were moderately difficult, but the thing that made it really difficult was just the freezing cold weather, which at the mountaintop, my weather radar app told me was negative 14 degrees Celsius, which I think is like 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Like that's what made it really challenging. If it was like just a regular fall day, it would be a challenging course, but it wouldn't be like as hard as it was. It really was the mental game of like, you'd get cold, and especially if you have cold hands and feet, is mentally gearing yourself up to go back out. That was the hard part, and I think the thing that people struggled with the most. So it was more like 6 sprints in a row as opposed to 2 beasts in a row. I don't know if it's better either way. I mean, people are just different. It was fine. Like for me, it wasn't any harder than an ultra. Just splitting it up is like, that's the way you kind of have to think about it. It's a little bit harder because you're having to do those upper body grip obstacles, you know, as opposed to only doing them twice for a regular ultra. You're doing them 6 times, or in this case 5 for the first 8, you know, which included multi-rig and rope climbs, for example, and twister. So you have to factor that in. It's like, okay, you are splitting it up into smaller mileage portions, but that means more upper body obstacles. So if that's like your game, you love it, that might not be so bad. Or if you're a pirate like Aaron Newell, who does it, you know, a 23 hours without failing a single obstacle, that's great. I'm done for 2019. I know I'm for sure going to be at Fayetteville. I really want to do Killington this next year. I've just got to figure out the coordination. I really want to do Killington next year. I just got to figure out coordinating it and you know, finding the right logistics in terms of like transportation, flying, whatever. I hope you enjoyed some of the footage. I'm going to keep working on making it a little bit more polished. I like this camera, just got to find the right mount and settings for it so you can get, you know, a clearer picture of what the events I'm doing look like. So that's it for me. Hopefully I'll see you out in the course sometime. Say hello if you see me, mention the video, and yeah, happy racing out there.